Hey guys, Mark Graham again, Gunplumber. This is part 2 of the tutorial on Rhodesian pattern camouflage application on an FAL rifle. So these are the two rifles that painted yesterday. They've had overnight to dry in the vault, and now we're going to distress them. I did paint some rack numbers on them this morning. The paint was dry enough that I could do that. I choose my rack numbers to match the last 3 digits of the RA number. That way I never duplicate one. So I'm actually on 420 right now, and I started at 400. And the RA number is 12417, so the rack number is 417. And our equipment is going to be a green scratchy pad, some 400 grit sandpaper, and some 320 grit sandpaper. Kind of torn between these two as to which I like the best. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to just scratch anything on the rifle. Since the cheek is going to go here, this area, at least comparing them to originals, is almost completely bare, all the way down to the plastic. But you basically want to hit every part of the paint lightly, which will flatten it. Be careful on the rack number that you don't take too much off to make it illegible, but having some of the paint underneath come through is not a bad thing. The sling mount, if you have it, if there's a sling on it, there's going to be virtually no paint on the metal portion that the sling runs through, because the sling gets dirt and dust in it, and as it saws back and forth, it's going to strip that to bare metal. So I'm just lightly going over it to break the sheen. There's usually not a whole lot of wear right on the underside here, but there is on the corners, because as you hold it, that's where your hand is. It's constantly rubbing here. Grips you're going to see on original guns as having virtually no finish on them at all around the center where someone's going to grip it. And I'm alternating between circles and side to side. You know, I don't want to create any kind of pattern. I want to make it so that there doesn't look like there's a pattern, that it's just natural wear. Top of the selector lever is almost always bare because it's been constantly manipulated. Same with the breakdown lever. Where the charging handle runs back and forth, that area there almost always has a lot of wear. Now, this particular one has a DS Arms aluminum lower on it, so I got to be careful how much paint I take off, because I'm not going to be able to do as much color variance on the aluminum as I can on steel. Receiver covers, the top of the charge handle also. We'll come back over it and you'll see, you know, it looks like it's all blended to one color. Once we rinse this with a light oil, it will return to the distinctive 2 separate colors. Charging handle knobs. Just imagine the guy's been grabbing this knob over and over. So you're going to have paint on the inside where he doesn't touch, and on the bottom here, but the operating portion of it's going to be pretty bare. Receiver covers tend to be pretty bare, but the heads of the trigger and sear axle screws, those are going to be pretty much bare around the edges. You're not going to get a lot of wear right in this channel here, because again, there's no contact, but you will get it on this high spot. So that's why I do it with the sandpaper by hand, because if I can touch it, it's an area that's going to get wear, and if the sandpaper doesn't reach it, it's an area that doesn't get wear. Handguards, I've seen some that were really, really worn, and the only place there were paint were on these 2 flats. So we'll go back with some coarser paper later and hit the high spots to take the paint almost completely off. Carry handle, if there is one, it's going to only have paint in the low sections. The barrel and the flash hider, these often are completely bare. Now, I've broken through the paint and you can see my black finish underneath, but I haven't broken through to the bare metal yet. And I do want to get some bare metal showing, but I don't want to overdo it. Sling swivel, same as the rear sling swivel. It's going to have a lot of wear where the sling rubs through, but not so much on these low areas. Flash hider, you got to be real careful that you don't give it a pattern. If you just do it like this, you're going to get round scouring marks on it. So I go both directions and muzzle. Now, there wasn't supposed to be any paint on this, but I did get a couple little drops, so I'll just take those completely off. Alright, now I'm going to move back to the handguards. I'm going to use the green scratchy pad here. Just play with the different grits. I've just found that 220 grit tends to take off too much finish at one time, and so I bounce back and forth between the 320, the 400, and the green scratch pad. Green scratch pad doesn't leave sanding marks the same way, but it's slower. And if you don't have, you know, these as separate sanding pads, you can use the one that's on the back of a kitchen sponge. I could buy these in several different grits. There we go. We're getting some good color coming through the paint. Alright, now I'm going to go back over, see if it removes any sanding marks. The metal on the front of the handguards. Da-di-da-di-da. You know, I think I might even go to a slightly coarser sandpaper for there. Here's a piece of 220. At least to get it started. Yeah, I'll just do it right here to show you the difference. So I'm going to sand this with the 220, and you can see that it kind of left where you can see the actual sanding marks, and that's something I want to avoid. So I'm going to hit that with the green scratchy pad to kind of remove those straight linear sanding marks and make it look a little bit more natural. And the underside of the trigger guard gets a lot of wear as well. As far as the mag catch and the bolt hold open, generally I just go over those real lightly. The green scratchy pad also is a little bit more flexible, and we'll get down into some of the crevices where the regular sandpaper doesn't have the flexibility to do it. Of course, you want to make sure you have full range of motion on your receiver lock. You want to make sure you don't have a whole lot of anything right in this groove. You don't want to end up gluing your receiver cover on. Now, if you want to do the bolt and bolt carrier, it's not a problem. Just take your fine, maybe 400, and just rub it. You know, all you're doing is taking years of dust and dirt and cleaning and scouring and cleaning again and just incorporating it all in a half hour. Okay, while the receiver cover is off, I'm just going to hit this top edge, because again, we don't want to have any trouble getting that receiver cover off, and I can better access the back edge of the ejection port, which gets quite a bit of wear from the brass ejecting. Now in this case, this is a DS Arms, and I don't want to advertise that it's a DS Arms. because we want it to look like a South African one. So I'm not going to sand over the DSA markings very much because then they'll stand out. Can't really do much about the serial number side. Okay, rear sight. So now I'm going to use an air hose to blow off some of this dust. So you can leave it this way, or you can darken the areas with acid or bleach. For acid, I use Birchwood Casey's Brass Black. It, when used on steel, makes it look like parkerizing. It's kind of a grayish color. And so if I wanted, for example, to tone down the silver there, I can just hit it with the brass, and now paint's still gone. It's not, but it's not bright shiny. It's just a little bit darker. But it's also a clean dark. There's no corrosion on it. It's just darker, but not quite bare metal. And I would say this is the quickest and easiest way to tone down the scouring. And if you use the Birchwood Casey aluminum black, which I may end up having to do because this is an aluminum lower, but if you use that on steel, it comes out more black. You don't get quite the brown color that would, I think, match. See, on the aluminum here, it doesn't really do anything. But aluminum black, most of you won't have aluminum lowers. Aluminum black darkens it, but it darkens it almost black, and worn aluminum isn't black. And don't dip your Q-tip back in. No double dipping. You'll contaminate the rest of the solution. Okay, now there's another way of doing it that gets a little bit more complicated. You take bleach and you put it on a paintbrush and you paint the gun with the bleach, and you sit and watch it, or come back in 10 minutes and it'll rust. This is a paint test plate where you paint it to see what the color is going to be. And I've parkerized it, sandblasted and parkerized it, and I've sanded it with 220 to demonstrate how you can get controlled rust with regular household bleach. Just going to paint it. And I will set that aside for about 10 minutes, and then we'll come back and look at it. What we have here is a rifle built with a new DS Arms Type 3 receiver, but an original finish Imbel parch kit. And I'm using this as an example to show you where the original wear would be. You can see it even has remnants of the original rack number. I don't know if they painted it in black or painted over it, but that's all original. So we can see, starting at the rear sling mount, that there's virtually no finish on the two sides where the sling rubs, and on the top. But the plate's fine, nothing worn there. I did do a touch-up refinish on the lower receiver, because one of the things I do in a build, you can't really see it, but I put a little teeny 1/8 inch pin right here that goes to the inside of the receiver and acts as a stop to keep the selector moving past the fire position. And so I sanded this area down so I could solder it and then refinish just this area. But you can see the original paint chipping up here. You can see how the top of the selector lever is almost bald, bare. Same with the receiver lock lever. And the sides of the trigger guard, pretty much bare metal. Bottom of the bolt hold open, top of the bolt hold open. Not so much on the sides of the mag catch, but definitely on the operating portions of it. As we move up on the receiver, you can see the handguard retaining ring, no finish on the bottom. because that's a contact point, but there's plenty of finish right here on the inside where nothing can reach. Same with on the sides. So what I did on the receiver was to refinish it in black over Parkerized and then sand it down a little bit in order to try to get it to match the other parts as to the degree of wear. Receiver covers always seem to have more wear on them than the rest of the gun, but you can see there's very little finish on the top, but you can also see that it's kind of dulled down a bit. It's not a bright, shiny scouring, and that's why you may want to go over the areas that you have polished with the brass black in order to tone it down. Now, as we move forward on the handguards here, again, you can see virtually the whole area is bare metal, but there's still paint on the inside here, and you can see Parkerizing here. So you have your bare metal, your Parkerizing, and your paint over the Parkerizing, so you have 3 distinct layers of finish. And that's why in some of the areas we want to use the green scratchy pad, because we want to break through the paint, but we want to have the Parkerizing show underneath before breaking through to the bare metal. Oh, if we go back here to the carry handle, you can see there's almost no finish on the outside surface of the carry handle, but plenty of original finish on the inside, which makes sense if you're carrying it and your hand is wrapped around there. This area is getting wear, the underside is not. Alright, so moving up to the front sling swivel, just like with the rear, lots of wear on the loop, not a whole lot on the band. Front edge of the band has a bit. Barrel, again, if you compare the amount of wear on the barrel and the flash hider to the back end of the gun, there's a lot more wear up here. Now, you can see that it's almost bare metal all the way up here, but it's not bright silver. It's kind of bright here, but this is a little bit toned down. It's got like a little grayish tint to it. And I'm going to grab the brass black here. That's why on this Rhodesian pattern where I've scoured it to bare metal, I might want to come back over and just tone it down a little bit. So you've got bare metal, but it's got a little bit of kind of brownish tint to it. And if you think that's been dulled too much, you can come back and hit it lightly with your green scratchy pad and get that happy medium, which pretty close in shade between these two. Alright, now we've had our test plate sitting for another 3 minutes. Let's bring that back, wipe it off. You can see we're getting little areas that look like dots. Those are areas where it's corroding more rapidly than the surrounding area. And you can also see how it's just a little bit darker, and so I'm just going to paint it with some more bleach and set it aside for another few minutes. We'll come back and look at it again. And you just keep repeating this until you get the degree of corrosion that you want, and then you rinse it very well. Okay, now we've gotten it pretty much where I want it. I'm really happy with the way the handguards turned out, but it's missing something, and what it's missing is that it's still bone dry. There is no oil on this at all. And you can either use silicone. I'm using the PB multi-purpose lubricant. I'm just going to spray the entire thing and wipe it down, and what that will do is put some of the color back into the paint. Because what I really want to do is be able to compare the rifle to one that we haven't started the distressing yet. So just sprayed it, wipe it down. So we have the rifle that we painted, and the only distressing was wrapping it in the plastic bag. And then we have 15 minutes of sandpaper and green scratchy pad and a little bit of oil. You can see we've taken off the sheen and we have made the texture a little more believable. So now we have, what was that, 3 applications of bleach with a paintbrush, letting it sit about 3 minutes to maybe 5 minutes each time. And you can definitely see where we're starting to get pitting forming. And you keep repeating this until you get the degree of corrosion that you want, and then just rinse it really well and oil it, and you're done. So thanks for joining me today. Hope you learned something. I know I make it look easy, and it's not particularly difficult. It just took me decades to learn how to make it easy. And hope you buy my paint sets at ArizonaResponseSystems.com.